So welcome everyone. Can you hear me well? I hope so. So greetings from Dakar. Thank you for joining us today from everywhere around the globe. And thank you for joining us, Francesca Bonetti. You might have realized we have a Zoom glitch. And so, we are trying to sort it out. I hope, you have found the instruction on the chat box to rename yourself, because of course we want to know who is joining and from where, and also other glitches. Apparently today there are multiple. So really apologies for that. And hopefully that will be sorted in a few minutes. So please keep sending messages so that we can, troubleshoot on the chat box. So before our program begins, just a few reminders. So we will be, of course, happy to know again so introduce yourself, where you are calling from. So please introduce yourself in the chat box with your name and location. Please keep your mic mute during the presentation to avoid really noises. And really feel free to answer questions in the chat box so that we can really, also entertain the conversation in the chat box. So we look forward to your participation and we are so happy to have you today. So over to a small video from our field.
Kuma kan saba men na ton kundo joma elema daha faso la sabati faso den bulu
ne yelema min jatemne no to santale no asoro nega ko sigi jako ni dem san mi to santale ko fe yu kandi ka fo ko we nega ko sigi dabla we dem san nga jako fu dabla ni fu jona lu dabla rayi wala jugu mun me ka muso la sigi ko nana fe no lu tama be dabla rayi
maile manim siam ambra doan na sol kono a folo le dem sonen na fanu ta obra dabluka fudu jona obra dabluka muso kono mal la bulu mati ebra la sabati denen na bulu mati ebra la sabati furnen na bara ebra la sabati lamini na kanda obra sabati.
Aujourd'hui, à nos jours, femmes, jeunes, hommes, nous sommes presque ensemble. L'ONG vraiment TOSTAN'S a soudé la population entre elles.
Kabin de TOSTAN kara ngalon do min soto je mbem fan nafala wolu mun nyinto TOSTAN yente karandile ay karande ay malan ko nata nyela janda be malan ko nata la ay karande malan ko ta mandir nyala comme aminata one aminata two le e karandro sifa yen karando sifa la malan ko ta mandir nya jannin de dunna kuto nyanta akesende la folo nin dunta nyinto nyine ben nafala wala nyinta nafala wala nyanta nyin ku karne kala je ko bani no nyina to wala de ko bani no nyina ngawo ay yo karan kenyir janne ina tan malan ko dina malan ko te ko ndi men fel de malan ko dina fa baake kadi biringo karanke nunda business oto nkadum rolo business somanda nkanye bekelen kakino ke futti ngawa somanda suto fanan tukum fanan kasuwo nyine wala ngachigino nyine suto ngawa.
Obrigado, Tosta. Também dina aqui entra da Mamu e tem mudança tio. Dança principalmente na meninos. Primeiro para não meninos, não tá lanta para mim só não despreza meninos, vai o trabalho. Magos, ora que só mais. Uma lanta para maior da menino boca, o da bal corpo, o dal siropa e bicho, o calçasse sapato, o quental comida, o dali comer. E por isso que agora vai pegar o trabalho. Ora que o menino está doente, o levar ao hospital. O cuida de si saúde. Gosta agora que alguém pode e também vai buscar registro para esse filho, o primeiro documento do menino. Coisa mais essencial, que tudo é através de Tosta. Não está falando obrigado, Tosta.
Wow, what a wonderful way to start, by really listening to the wonderful testimonials of our partner communities. And again, apologies for the glitches, and there are many, and I know people are trying to sort them out, but I hope you managed to enjoy really the testimonials from, these wonderful men and women talking from the field, always so inspiring. So before I introduce our speakers and the program for today, really allow me to share a few words about the great announcement Mackenzie Scott made about her giving. And that was covered, of course, extensively in the media in the past few days. So TOSTAN is excited, humbled, and so grateful to be included on her list. As TOSTAN celebrates this year its 30th anniversary, this gift is really a wonderful recognition of the contribution of the communities first, staff, volunteers, and partners, all our partners over the past 3 decades. So it feels so timely for me today to share with the recognition with all of you to start with. All of you who are long-term and also more recent supporters of our mission. Your support today is more important than ever, actually, as we seize this unique opportunity to really advance our common agenda, our common dream, our common ambitions, which is scaling community well-being. So 2022 is going to be a very important year for TOSTAN, an important time where, of course, we will complete our current plans, which are ambitious already, but also we will gather our leadership, our key partners, and we will reflect together, think bold, actually, together, really to shape our future strategy towards 2030. So thank you again for being with us on this journey, on this amazing journey, and thank you for being on the phone today. Thank you. So let me present you our program today, which is quite exciting. We can't wait. So we will hear, first of all, from Yusuf Sane, which is our national coordinator in Guinea-Bissau. He will give us an overview of the Breakthrough Generation Initiative. And then we will dive into the initial findings with Madi Sisse, who is our monitoring, evaluation, research and learning guru, our specialist. And then, of course, we will also listen again from the field, from our community partners, and we will listen the story of Salimatu Jau from Guinea-Bissau through the voice of Yusuf. We will have then some time for question and answer and comments, and I will have the pleasure to facilitate that before we close at 4:15 p.m. GMT. So thank you again for being with us. Without further ado, over to Yusuf.
Thank you, Elena. Greetings to everyone. As Elena said, my name is Yusuf Sane. I'm the national coordinator of TOSTAN in Guinea-Bissau. I'm saying boa tarde to all of you from TOSTAN's partner communities in Guinea-Bissau and our entire team here in Bissau. I was invited here to share a bit of background as a reminder about the Breakthrough Generation Initiative. And I just want to say that it's a particular honor for me to be here with you today. And in fact, I and my colleagues here in Bissau, we worked on the initial planning of this project, of this initiative, Breakthrough Generation. And I was fortunate to take on the role of national coordinator just after the start of Breakthrough Generation in 2018. And it has been an amazing journey. And it's a pleasure for me to share the results with you today. So we had a chance to hear from a few of the participants in the video. And now we're going to place some of the geography into the conversation. Here we have a map that shows the locations of the 4 countries, of the 148 communities that we partnered with in the 4 countries. And the 4 countries are the Gambia, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, and Mali. As you can see from the map, TOSTAN does not program village by village, or does not partner village by village, but rather in clusters of interconnected communities. So in our partnerships with communities, we do take into consideration the geography, as well as the social ties that exist between the communities. Next slide, please. And we wanted to begin with a very, very brief overview of the Community Empowerment Program, and especially a few key aspects of the evaluation that my colleague Madi will present to you in a few minutes. The Community Empowerment Program, or the CEP as we often call it, it is the foundational way that we work directly with communities. It runs in national African languages, For example, in Guinea-Bissau, it runs in Fula, Mandinka, and Creole. And Creole is a language actually that you heard the last speaker on the video speaking. The program at local level is run by TOSTAN'S trained facilitators who live in the community, and they host classes during a period three times a week over a period of 3 years. The program includes time to start up and close down, and we also have breaks for communities to engage in their agricultural activities, especially during the heavy rain season. The program is holistic and integrated, and it covers democracy, human rights, problem solving, hygiene and health, and literacy, math, and management skills. The CEP, the Community Empowerment Program, is really defined by how it works. It's human rights based, and it begins from and works within the community's values and its aspirations for the future. It engages the entire communities and includes the participation of men, women, girls, boys, elders, and youth, and the wider community as a whole. TOSTAN also trains community management committees to oversee and coordinate community activities in key areas such as governance, education, health, the environment, and economic empowerment. And as Madi's presentation will explore later, the program supports communities to address multiple interconnected issues. For example, decision-making in the home and the community, school enrollment and retention for children, and many others. CMCs, or community management committees, also play a central role in what TOSTAN calls organized diffusion, in which class participants and community management committee members are sharing with and engaging their family and extended networks around the knowledge that they have gained in the classes. And they also engage the community as a whole on how they should address this new knowledge and information. Next slide, please. So for TOSTAN, the breakthrough generation which was implemented between 2017 and 2020. It was a unique implementation for us of the Community Empowerment Program, because it took our work to a new scale with 148 communities in four countries. It also built upon the funding and partnership model that we developed in the generational change, which was the cycle before, while creating a collective funding approach and project design, which allowed us to implement our CEP, the flagship model, including updates and latest innovations. Perhaps most relevant to today's conversation, it gives us an important chance to improve upon the new monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning system that we've developed during the generational change in 3 years, and to carry out the evaluation that we're going to share with you today. And on that note, I'm going to pass the floor over to my colleague, Madi, who will share more about the results of the evaluation with you.
Madi, you're muted. And let me add that all of this was completed during COVID. So indeed, the Breakthrough Generation Initiative has gone through COVID as well. And despite that, here are the results. So please, Madi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Elena. You're right, I was muted. Greeting again, everyone. I am Madi Sise, the Monitoring, Evaluation, Research and Learning Specialist in TOSTAN International. And very happy to have you around. Just to say that, yeah, the evaluation we are talking about, we interview over 2,700 people. They included participants of the TOSTAN class, the learners they adopted, and with whom they shared their class experience and other community members. We sampled 20% of partner village in each country. That is 8 in Guinea, 8 in Guinea-Bissau, and 8 in Mali, and 6 in Gambia. We undertook baseline and endline studies using the same standardized questionnaire. And for the endline study, we added focus groups. And we used all the data collected to inform a set of indicators in the 6 priority areas of well-being. I mean, governance, education, health, the environment, economic empowerment, but also the changes in social norm relating to harmful practice on which we place a specific attention. Slide. Overall findings. In our initial review of the data, we focus on whether the objectives of the breakthrough generation had been reached. Recall, the breakthrough generation objectives included enabling communities to establish a common vision and to gain the knowledge and skills to achieve it. They also included the sharing of the class experience in households with the community and other communities in order to be able to collectively re-examine and change harmful practices. And finally, the breakthrough generation objectives included communities taking action in the areas of governance, education, health, economic development, environment, and human rights. Today, we are very pleased to share that the initial findings from this evaluation show that the breakthrough generation objectives were reached. Let us together explore further the major initial finding of this evaluation. Key finding number 1, change in social norm, change of social norms. I will present here a data chart that summarizes the evolution you will see between the baseline and the end line of the community's perceptions and social expectation. But before that, I just want to invite Seth Koshan to just explain a little bit how we will read the data chart. Slide. So Seth, can you go on?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much, Madi. TOSTAN has an incredible amount of data, and to get through all of the impact that's created across this entire set of work, it's very difficult. There's just so much data. So what we've done is we've put color into the analysis in order to really show where that change has really happened. And so we essentially are using a red and green color basis. And if I direct your attention to the upper left part of the slide, success and improved well-being is when somebody goes from red to green. So red would be that they approve or are indifferent to that harmful practice. The light green is where they go from being either indifferent to disapproving. Disapproving is light green. And dark green is that they're willing to take action. They're willing to intervene. So if you move into the center of the slide where you have 3 almost flag-looking symbols, the way this is oriented is each rectangle on the left side of the rectangle is the baseline, okay? And the baseline being like what percentage of the population that was sampled was either red being indifferent, light green being disapproving, or dark green being willing to intervene. And so in the first example, where a huge transformation, you can see it started with a huge amount of the population being indifferent or approving. And at the end line, that went almost down to 0. Okay, so this would be, this would essentially mean that at the start, the people were either indifferent or supportive of the act. And at the end, they were so changed that they were willing to intervene to change, to stop that from happening. when we move to the second kind of example, the conversion to action, you didn't have a lot of people you see on the baseline on the left side that were indifferent. There's a lot of people who disapproved, but were not really willing to act. But what this means is that in the movement to the end line, these people made steady progress. They were motivated to move from disapproval to action. So this is what you'll see as Maddie shows this data. There's a lot of movement to action. Okay. Now the third example is steady gains in moving people from approval or indifference to eliminating that. And that basically means that there might have been not too many people who were indifferent at the start, but the ones who did disapprove were more motivated to act. And so as you look at this, you're gonna see a lot of different colors, but what you want to look for are these kind of patterns. Okay, so if you look at the bottom left part of this chart here, how we're going to look at this is we're going to have the various topics on the rows and the various countries on the columns, and you're going to see this symbol, this baseline to inline transformation for each country on each topic.
Okay, slide. Thank you very much, Slide. I hope that this helps understand or make you more familiar now about how to read the data chart I present here. And the main information that I want to share here is that these data on the slide indicate a major change from the situation at the start of the program, when the practices of FGC, child marriage, and corporal punishment to discipline children were widely accepted. And even in the case of FGC and corporal punishment, expected. But as you can see, at the end of the 3 years duration of the program, the situation almost was exactly the reverse. The data show that the harmful practices are no longer there. The change is really massive in Guinea, as you can see, and also really important in Guinea-Bissau and Mali. It is less dramatic in Gambia, but it's still important. The findings are indicative of something that at the end of the program, new social norms have been established by the communities. The data show that FGC is unacceptable at the end of the program. Not also that if someone considering cutting their girls, all the community members would intervene to stop it. And the same is true for marrying girls under 16 years old and using corporal punishment to discipline children. You see, in the first line, first row, we are talking about open defecation. Open defecation is another harmful practice because it can impact negatively on the health of the community. At the start of the program, there was no social norm that people should defecate in public, as you might expect, right? Yet the data indicate that by the end of the program, the social norm is established by the communities to make open defecation unacceptable. A large number of people would intervene to stop it. Slide. Case finding number 2, it relates to change in adverse gender norm. And there I will talk about role, voice, and influence of women, how they evolve between the baseline and the inline study. But then also I will need the help of set question to explain a little bit how to read the following data chart I will share on the screen. So Seth, you have the floor.
Oh, thanks, Mari. Again, we're using this red to green movement. And in this case, we have the matrix is really big, okay? Because we have a baseline of the community members. And then we have an end line that includes participants in the program and adopted learners. And we have that for each country on each topic. Okay, so there's a lot of data to look at. So again, we're using color. Okay, so starting again in the upper left from red to green, we want to go from the agreement with the statements. There are statements put out that sort of give an indication of what the beliefs of the people are here. So a red would be a low agreement rate. The color is basically broken down at 50%. So at the 50% mark, 51% is light green, 49% is light red. So anything in the lightly shaded areas is around 50%, sort of medium. And then darker the green, the more highly people agree, the higher percentage of people who agree with this. So if you look to the colors that you see there, you're going to want to always be comparing the baseline to the participant and the end line. And one thing to note here is that the community baseline includes the participants and the adopted learners. And when we looked at the rate of the numbers, these participants and adopted learners are a large part of the community sample. So when you see the data, I think you'll see some of the changes here. But what you want to look at is what the color changes. So a big impact on participants and a big impact on adopted learners would be red at the baseline and dark green at participant and adopted learners. And you're going to want to look across for each topic for each country. When you have something where there was a big impact on participants, but a medium impact on adopted learners, you're going to see a dark green in the middle and a lighter pink or light green on the far side. When you want to, if there's no impact at all, you're going to see red, red, and red, like nothing would have changed. Okay, you might actually see in some cases the baseline is not completely red because people might have agreed at a higher level or close to 50%. Now, put your attention to the bottom left, just so you orient yourself on how to see this chart. We have topics. Each row is a topic, okay? And we're grouping now, instead of separating the countries out, we're putting each country next to each other in the baseline. And then we're putting each country next to each other in the end line for participants, and the end line again for adopted learners. So you're going to see kind of three groups of boxes. And the way you're going to want to compare this is matching the country. So for example, if you looked at the very first box for community, you're going to want to compare it to the very first box for participants and the very first box for adopted learners. And that's where you're going to see the variation. So Mari, back to you.
Thank you very much, Seth. And it allows me now to share this data chart with the participant. And as a measure of women's roles within the community, you see that we collected data on whether women reported that they expressed their ideas at community meetings. It is the first line, the first row in this table. And as you can see, the data indicate that there was significant change in women's role, voice, and influence in community meetings. In just one country, in Mali, you see that women were expressing themselves at the time of the baseline study. But also there, if you consider the baseline at the end line, you see that the increase is very important by the end of the program. As a measure of women's role and influence within now households, we're collecting data on whether decisions deemed critical to well-being were taken jointly by husband and wife. The second two lines show major increases in joint decision-making at household level on topics like birth spacing and sending children to school, suggesting that their increased role, voice, and influence in matters affecting the household. We note that in Mali, female adopted learners reported that joint decision-making regarding sending children to school take place just under half of the time. However, this is still a remarkable increase from baseline, when joint decision making was virtually non-existent. They also indicate, this data, that change in social norms also took place with respect to gender equity. They show a substantial increase in women's role, voice, and influence at both community and household level. And we can add that during the 3 years duration of the program, changes in adverse gender norms went well beyond the abandonment of harmful practices that particularly affect women and girls. Slide. Key finding number 3 is about the effectiveness of what we call organized diffusion. My colleague Yusuf Stanet talked about it some minutes ago. But what is organized diffusion first? In TOSTAN, we use a process called organized diffusion to help spread information from the class to the rest of the community and to connected communities or social network. This social mobilization process increase the impact of our program. It's very important. Spreading new ideas organically from person to person first, and community to community. It's very important. Slide. Let me just continue to explain now the organization, saying that within a partner community, each participant in a TOSTAN class adopts a friend, a neighbor, or a family member, and regularly discuss the class experience with him or her, sharing new knowledge learned during the class. This practice ensures that the concept discussed within the CEP is spread through the class to the community. It also contributes to increasing the role and voice of the participants, who are mostly women. And data from this slide now, you have on the screen, show that changes in knowledge are important among participants, right? But also among adopted learners in all 4 countries between the baseline and the endline studies. Overall, the strongest results are for the participants, but we can see that change in knowledge among adopted learners are at levels very similar to those among class participants. These results validate the effectiveness of organized diffusion in spreading new perspectives and knowledge beyond TOSTAN class. It happened when it comes to harmful practices like those you see on road, child marriage, corporal punishment, and FGC, but also when it comes to health practice like knowledge of germ transmission, knowledge of use of your ORS or hand washing. But we can see that the results relating to the abandonment of harmful practice, as we see in the key finding number 1, also support that the finding, that the organized diffusion strategy is effective. I say this because the changes in social norms related to FGC, to child marriage, and to corporal punishment would not have been possible without the spread of new perspective and knowledge beyond the class. So I just wanted to recall this. Slide. Key finding number 4 now is in relation with the implementation by community of activity to promote well-being. It is very important also. Beyond self-efficacy, TOSTAN also seek for collective efficacy. So communities develop and use the capacity to organize and undertake a lot of activity collectively, but with the goal to improve community well-being. And in this process, as my colleague Yusuf said earlier, the CMC takes or plays an important role. The CMC is a community-based organization, you can say it, established by the community at the outset of the program, I mean the CEP. And the members are trained by TOSTAN, and they play a huge role in terms of mobilizing or gathering community members around collective activity for the well-being of the community. Next slide. This slide shows or a snapshot of some achievements, of accomplishment made by the CMCs in the 4 countries involved in the Breakthrough Generation project. You can see that there are a diversity of activities in which the CMCs were engaged with the whole community members and for the well-being of the community. I will not go in detail on that, but just to say that all these kind of activities, all these numbers indicate the capacity for communities to develop and use collectively activity to improve community well-being. And these findings indicate also that community management committees, CMCs, play a huge role, an important role in terms of implementing collective activities that will contribute to the well-being of the whole community members. There are these kind of findings I wanted to share as initial findings. For sure that we'll have more in some months, but just to say that slide, the findings we see there as initial finding from this evaluation and their alignment with findings from previous CP evaluations and other research made internally or externally further validate the TOSTAN model in promoting community well-being, as well as our theory of change, I mean the CEP theory of change also. There is something, these findings or initial findings I wanted to share with you. And now I'm going to hand the floor over to Yusuf, who will describe a perfect example of what I was talking about regarding communities. Thank you very much for the attention. Yusuf, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madi. I would like to share with you all a story about Salimatu Jau, who is a truly inspiring woman, and she has helped me to see beyond the horizon and into my own vision of the future. When I started working with TOSTAN in 2014, as a part of generational change in 3 years, the program was already rolling into its 2nd year. By this time, people in our partner communities were already open to notions of inclusion and participation in affairs that affected everyone in the community. And I was visiting, as I was visiting these communities, it was clear to me that women had an active role in their society at this point. I did not realize then that they had just started to step into their new roles. So the first time that I visited a traditional potential partner community, it was in 2017 with Breakthrough Generation. I had the chance to visit the partner communities as we were sharing objectives and expectations for our future partnerships with the communities. Of course, in this kind of setting, the men are always going to speak first. It's expected. But we tried to, casually engage the women into the conversation. And we saw that the response was very often that our idea is whatever the men say, or we are in favor of whatever the men say. But you could clearly see that they had questions and ideas of their own to share. As we saw in the slide on adverse gender norms, just about a third of women that were interviewed in Guinea-Bissau at the baseline had previously expressed their ideas in a community meeting. So for these women that we were visiting in the future partner communities, the expectation, the social expectation, was that a woman does not have a voice in the community affairs, and she should not get up to speak in public. And so this sentiment was so strong and sensitive that they saw that it was better for them to just accept whatever was said by the men, of course. The fact is, experiencing this for the first time, I was taken aback, and it showed on my face. We hear these stories of this, about these limitations, and we discuss it, of course, in the program as it progresses. But to experience it for the first time, I have to tell you, it's very emotional. So while I was leaving these communities that we were visiting, as I said, for the first time, I was very eager to work with them. One of the women that we encountered in these visits was Salimatu Jau from the village of Kolimesenkunda. Salimatu, unlike many women in generations before her, did have the opportunity to go to school as a child. And then she was taken out of school. She was married at the age of 15, and she had children soon after. She believed so much that she deserved more and she deserved better for her life, that she went back to school after a few years and she completed her studies. Though she had a higher level of education and even more knowledge about the affairs of the community than most men who were actually present in that first meeting, she could still not express her ideas in public, and she did not have a decision-making role in her village. The program, which they started soon after, enabled her to step out of these social expectations and begin to unlock her true potential. She started to participate in the TOSTAN classes regularly, and after each session, she gained more confidence to voice her opinions. Soon after, she was selected as the coordinator of the community management committee of her village, Kolimesenkunda, and she left an outstanding example for others to follow. Within a few months of the program, she and many other women in her community became decision makers in their homes, and they were organizing decision making around the community. And the governor of the region of Oyu, where they are located, she was very impressed by this. The governor invited them to visit frequently to coordinate collectively on their action plans. And often the governor would call upon Salimatu and her community management committee to advise other communities on their development plans. So she's truly a model for me. She's truly a model for us in Guinea-Bissau. Today, Salimatu's teenage daughters are both in school. She says that she and her husband are both committed to ensuring that their daughters finish school. But this is not enough for her. A few years ago, Salimatu said to me she said something to me as we were celebrating her transformation and her accomplishments. She said, I'm not the only woman that can have this trajectory. And we are not the only women that face these challenges. There are other women with much more potential than me. And we have to ensure that what I have experienced in the last year will be available to them as well. And I was very touched by her comment. It was as if she felt her achievements were incomplete unless she supported others in the same situation to step out of their social expectations and to step into their true self. Salimatu is a woman from a village where traditionally women's access to employment is also a major limitation. The traditional social expectation is that a woman would only have a domestic role to play in their society. And this year, Salimatu took her community one step further. With full support from her husband and her community, Salimatu joined TOSTAN as a program facilitator in a new region of implementation. I'm clapping. I'm sure you are. She says, Salimatu says that she must be part of the movement, really, that will scale her experience to all women in Guinea-Bissau. She's the first coordinator of a community management committee that we have had turn into a facilitator. Something tells me that she's just getting started, and there will be many more like her to come. So I truly wonder what she will accomplish next. And I hope you have the chance to visit Guinea-Bissau and meet Salimatu for yourself one day. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Yusuf. Muito obrigada. This is wonderful. And thank you. Thank you, Madi. And thank you also, Seth, for stepping in and help us really talk about these amazing qualitative and quantitative data. And we try to respond to your question in the chat. You know, we sit on a wealth of data that we just started analyzing, but actually we couldn't resist to show you these initial findings. So there is more to come in a written form, and hopefully also, more presentation, of course. And we are available for any individual follow-up with any of you who are interested in diving more into this data. So just to respond to one of the questions in the Q&A box. So please use that, because there have been a lot of comments, and thank you so much for posting. So use that box, please, for the question and answer. We still have 25 minutes together. So let's make most of that time. So are we going to share these findings with communities? Yes, indeed. The answer is yes. We started sharing, first of all, with our staff, of course, with everyone who has participated into this major effort, of course, our teams, and with the local authorities. So we have already started a wave of presentation at the national level and at the local regional level. Those are our, of course, major implementing partners. So we couldn't do anything without their support. Now, we are also going to present back to the communities. So the countries are at different pace because of other activities and also because of the COVID situation ongoing. So it depends on the situation. They are advancing on this plan, but indeed, communities will have access to this information as well. So I just wanted to note it that also during COVID, we had public declaration. They were smaller, they were symbolic, but the Gambia, the communities from the Gambia, the communities from Mali, and the communities from Guinea that participated into this effort did declare the intention to abandon publicly harmful practices. And that was in December 2020. The last wave of the public declaration will happen during the last week of June in Guinea-Bissau, with Yusuf, coordinating this effort, of course, with the community members. I do remind you that the declaration are organized by communities themselves, those who participated into the program, and also the adopted communities. But of course, we at TOSTAN facilitate that process for making it possible. So I'm going now to open the mic to all of you. Please share your question. There is one coming, and I really want to appreciate all the efforts of the team to putting this together. So thank you again. There is one question about FGC. So FGC from this data seems to be high in Mali. So the person is seeing that it's Francesca Monetti, but it's not Francesca, and actually it's going to be responded by Francesca. So I don't know who is asking this question, but so the question is about Mali and about FGC seems to be high compared to other countries. Why is that? So can I invite Francesca Monetti, the real Francesca Monetti, who is actually supporting us strategically. So Francesca, please introduce yourself first. And thank you again for your support in analyzing this data. And please respond then to this first question. Thank you.
Thank you. So I am the real Francesca Monetti. Sorry that all of you got my name. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. On the question on Mali and FGC, thank you for bringing up the slide again. I think the way to look at this is that there was a drastic change in Mali. It was just slightly less drastic than in the other places. It's not that FGC is still high in Mali. What's, I think, the most important thing to read out of all of these graphs, the first three, are that for the harmful practices, FGC, child marriage, and corporal punishment of children, there's a new social norm in place that is shown, really indicated by the fact that so many people now respond that they will act to end the practice. So we have social dynamics in place now that are driving towards the end of these practices. Many people have stopped already. There are some people that have not, but there are social expectations and social forces in place that continue the process. As Elena just said, in Mali, after this data was collected, there was the public declaration. So it may also be a question of timing. And Mali may have started at a point where the tradition was stronger than in others. But the data clearly shows that the new social norm is there in Mali, like in the other countries, and is there for all three of the harmful practices that before had a social norm holding the practices in place.
Thank you, Francesca.
Back over to Elena, unless there are other.
Yeah, so there are two other questions, which is quite interesting. So thank you, Fatimata. That was from Fatimata C, our vice chair of the board. Thank you so much, Fatimata, for that question. So there is a question about the cluster of communities. So Yusuf, you mentioned the importance of partnering with cluster of villages. The question is from Lorraine from ID Insight. How far do you think that the fact that you pick villages in clusters and no more spread in the countries made a difference to the results? I mean, this is a question to Madi and maybe to Francesca as well. Madi, would you like to start answering to this?
Hi, Elena, thank you very much for this question. I think that just to complete with what Francesca said, that is that this kind of question of why different situation across countries is to be, explored further also. That's what we mean by saying that we are in initial findings, but this kind of results just will push it or will encourage it to go deeper to understand such a difference we see among the countries. Because we know that in each countries, communities in which TOSTAN has worked may have their own story, they have their own specificities. So it is something to explore deeper. I mean, through qualitative approach to understand more why some situation or how we can explain some situation in some countries. Regarding now, the importance of partnering with the cluster of village. I think that this is very important because now we are looking at, scaling our program, but by trying to reach some other level like districts to be sure that we have some geographic entities in which we can make some difference. I think that is very important because this kind of needs arise when we wanted to see the impact of our interventions through studies like DHS or some other national surveys. We noted that the sampling used by this kind of studies at national or regional level cannot allow people to see the impact of total intervention, because we were working in very localized communities. So that's why we are now trying to move into another perspective. I mean, gathering communities in which we intervene in geographic entity level, so that when a survey will consider this level, we can bring some evidence about how this geographic zone partner with TOSTAN differs from other geographic zone similar but not receiving TOSTAN program. I think that it is an idea that we consider here.
Thank you. Thank you,
Can I go
Matt.
in the other question?
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted, there was a follow-up question to Francesca answer in the chat box, and I think it's important to answer to that, because we are on the FGC area. We are talking about perception and practice, of course. Francesca, would you like to take that, please?
Sure.
And if you have
Thank you.
to what Madi said, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. The question, I think, was about, we're only looking at perceptions. What do we know really about the practice? And we actually do have data, and I'm not sure if Megan can show the slide that's at the bottom of the deck that shows data on the incidence.
Incidence.
All the way down at the should be, there it is. Thank you so much, Megan. So this is data that shows how respondents declare whether they're actually cutting their girls or not in the last 12 months. And we see everywhere a very important decrease. But as I said before, you know, there could be something that's an extraneous force that it influences the practice during a particular year. The expectations are really important, because those show that there are social forces in place to continue the ending of the practice, to continue that process of abandonment. But we do have other data, and we didn't put it in the presentation, but we have it. We had it ready to show you, because we didn't put it in the presentation partly because we are continuing the analysis. By the time that we do the final report before the end of this year, we expect to be able to provide further information as we look at this more in detail. I hope that answers the question. And if there's more questions, please feel free to send them forth.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesca. So there is an important question from Julia Lala Malahaja, founder of the Orchid Project. Thank you, Julia, for being there. So we're referring to the slide about the evolution of communities' perception and social expectation. So Guinea clearly stands out. So we have seen, you know, how successful the results are in Guinea, and the results are different. You have seen a number of variation across the country. So I will let Madi respond, but there's to start off by saying that these are initial findings. Yeah. We are going deeper. So some of these initial findings, and this is the way we work, we look at data and we start going deeper. So we have a round of qualitative data that we are analyzing, and thank you to Diane, who is, I'm sure, on the phone. I've seen Mike, you know, wonderful volunteer for TOSTAN, really specialized on qualitative analysis. So we're doing a great work with Diane and the team, of course, to dive deep into qualitative data, and of course to cross those to triangulate those qualitative and quantitative to have a story about the countries. But this, to me, from a programmatic perspective, from a leadership perspective, needs to go back to the teams, to the country teams, so that we together can ask ourselves questions. So this is a long process, but it's a very informative process, and it's a process that is done because we want to improve our model, so the delivery. So this is so important. We are extremely committed to learning and to improve. I mean, Molly has taught us to never stop asking questions, always continue and persistently, continuously improve, iterate our models so that it can respond to the needs. And to the needs means reading feedback, from participants through this data. So please, Madi, if you want to add there, otherwise then we have another question as well from Fatimata.
Yes, Elena, you're absolutely right saying that, yeah, we need to go deeper to provide evidence about this kind of things. But we have, some, subjective opinion about why the situation is there, because we know that going there many times and interacting with the communities, that what we found as different from Guinea communities to other countries' communities is that we see there a high level of organization into our communities. It is remarkable that in Guinea, as Vivien, who is the focal point for Guinea, said, they never have a meeting, a community meeting, without inviting other partners that involve more communities in such community activities. So I think that this involvement, this high involvement of a diversity of community-based organization towards the same goals for the community well-being make people more engaged in terms of appropriating what they learn from TOSTAN class and putting it in practice. I think that is an idea, but as you said, more research, more exploring that collective data and talking with the communities and local leaders and our colleagues in Guinea will bring more information about this kind of situation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madi. Actually, you're going exactly in the direction of the next question, which comes from Fatimata, which is really promoting exchanges between communities, between countries, and how this opportunity can boost progress, increase engagement. This is actually what's happening apparently in Guinea. A multitude of actors coming together to fuel that movement that Salima too is kind of feeling part. She feels compelled actually to be part of. So indeed, Fatimata, we do encourage, we do organize up to, of course, the country teams initiative. We do engage in exchanges between communities. One recently happened in the last quarter between Medina Yorofula and communities in the Gambian, so the Upper River region where we operate, and the Central River region. So those are cross-border initiatives or inter-village meetings and exchanges that we encourage, because there's so much to learn, there's so much to share. So we have done that in the past across countries. I remember the Mauritanian, that has been an historical trip, the Mauritanian traveling all the way to Senegal and then to Bissau and then to Guinea. These are historical trips that met really communities, that brought communities together. So this is not new at TOSTAN, and we will continue, of course, encourage those kind of exchanges. They do indeed boost, progress, and we refer to it as really the movement, leading to dignity for all. So thank you. I'm just doing a time check. We have 5 minutes together. So thank you for wonderful questions. So I have one from Mary-Ellen Cunningham. I've also seen Libby on the phone. Thank you both for being there. Mary-Ellen is our board member. So we are talking about harmful practices here. So how are these behaviors and practices labeled, referred to with communities? Is the term harmful practices actually used with communities? So it's a question about language, which we care a lot about language. Molly actually is on another call in another panel. Actually, she's the keynote speaker to an important event about mediation and peace and security. So she's very sorry not to be here with all of us. I know she would have jumped into this question to respond to this question. So maybe Francesca, you want to start on this? I think this is your area.
Sure, thank you, Elena. The process. Hi, Mary Ellen. Great to have you here with us. The process of change is one where it's the communities who identify the the practices that were their long-held practices and now start to see them as being limiting their well-being. So we don't call them harmful practices, but there is education on, for example, when it comes to FGC and child marriage, unreproductive health, and it elicits questions about existing practices. It elicits questions, and it elicits therefore then also information about the harmful consequences possible for the practices. So with child marriage, there's the whole issue of early pregnancies and the risks of early pregnancies, as well as, of course, not sending the girls to school and the limitation on the future, et cetera. So the short answer is we don't use harmful practices as such, but the program brings out the harms and enables the discussion so that people themselves can work towards and decide to work towards putting an end to those practices.
Thank you, Francesca. Yusuf, would you like to add something from the field? I'm sure you have your perspective on this. Can you hear us, Yusuf?
I'm sorry, I actually did not hear the question fully.
Yeah, so we were referring to the language about harmful practices, you know, so Mary Ellen was asking, do communities refer, do they use this term? And so Francesca was, of course, saying they do not, but of course we talk about the harm. And I think this is why we are also known by, you know, not using mutilation, because we don't think this is, you know, the correct and the sensitive way of talking about female genital cutting. So I don't know, do you have a perspective from, of course, your firsthand daily work, please? To the point, because we have a few minutes. Thank you.
Sure. I would have to say it varies. Even within communities that have actually abandoned, they still wouldn't openly want to speak about the abandonment in every case. And actually, it goes back to trust. What we see is that, you know, if the communities know who they're speaking to and they trust who they're speaking to, then, you know, they'll speak more freely and open about it. But if there isn't that level of trust, then we see that the communities just don't want to discuss it, and perhaps they're trying to avoid naming and shaming. I think, especially in countries that have now declared, you know, FGC illegal, it's a crime to practice FGC, and it's very rare that, you know, people who may somehow, you know, be perceived as, let's say, former criminals, would want to speak openly about, you know, their previous, you know, experiences or their previous actions. And this is in cases where, you know, our partner communities obviously didn't mean to cause anybody harm by doing it. So I would say it really varies. But for us, we find that yes, the word, you know, harmful is actually used in the partner communities, but we don't always believe that it will be used, you know, in the same way to a stranger.
Thank you, Yusuf, and thank you for bringing trust in, you know, that answer. I think trust is what is allowing to really support communities leading their journey. And I think Marianne's suggestion is wonderful. And I think we should make, you know, we should make sure in this kind of context that we appreciate that nuance, and then we certainly do so. So we are almost coming to the end. I cannot say, you know, I cannot re-quote all the wonderful comments and supportive comments, and I know you have many more questions. This is just the beginning of the journey in discovering this data, And I would like to, for those who have recently joined us in this journey, that we have done a first iteration of 3 years in 150 communities. That was actually as I joined as CEO. So we finished. So we finished that as I joined. So that was 2013, 2016, sorry, and then we launched this new iteration of the program, as Yusuf stated at the very beginning, where we retested actually the new monitoring evaluation system that I have put in place. So it is a journey where we are going to compare also set of data. Once we are done with the really in-depth analysis of the breakthrough generation, we will compare the breakthrough generation data with the generational change data. So that is two sets of data which are going really to help us building the body of evidence that we are really working hard on. So there was a question about Senegal, because Senegal is not on this set of data. And again, Senegal is also having interesting data, but it's not included in this because this specific two initiative included the other countries and not Senegal. But actually in the last descriptive study that we did about the set of data of the generational change in 3 years, we included data from Senegal to be able to compare from the same years, to be able to compare also Senegal. So David, you asked that question. I will send you a report that includes data for Senegal along the other countries so that you can compare a similar situation. So I'm actually almost about to say goodbye and thank you. It is our honor to be on this journey with you. Allow me to say thank you to the team, Madi, Yusuf, everyone. Really, you did an amazing job in presenting this. It's so exciting. Thank you to our communities. First of all, we are so proud of their journey, of their achievement, all the Salimatu that are out there that made us so proud and that we are truly committed to support. So thank you for being with us. And I will say a bientôt, see you very soon. We will share with you the documents that we agreed upon, that we promised, and we will be in touch soon to continue this learning journey together. Thank you. Bon après-midi, bonne soirée. À bientôt. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining.